Hey friends, I hope your week is off to a great start. Today I'm going to be trying Chris Morocco's recipe for gluten-free chocolate buckwheat waffles. So brunch is my favorite meal of the day, and I like it because it's a break from the ordinary. Monday through Friday I'm drinking green smoothies and having overnight oats, but on the weekends when I've got a little bit more time, homemade waffles are such a great treat. And this recipe for chocolate waffles from Chris Morocco seems really interesting and unlike anything I've tried before. So I do these Bon Appetit recipe tests every Wednesday. If you like this one, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. Without any further ado, let's see how this goes. As always, I'll leave a link to the recipe and ingredient quantities in the description box below. So I'm starting off by making my crunchy topping. The recipe called for a combination of buckwheat groats and sesame seeds. Since I couldn't find buckwheat groats, I thought that this flaky coconut would be a great addition since there's coconut oil in the waffle recipe. So you just get everything mixed together with some maple syrup, spread it out on a baking tray, bake it until it's crispy and brown, and then you're going to transfer that to some parchment paper to cool completely. Next, I'm moving on to the ricotta topping. So this is a really nice addition to the waffle because it's a little bit savory and rich and not overly sweet. So I really like this addition. It's completely optional. So it's just ricotta cheese, maple syrup, and kosher salt. And then you're just gonna whisk this to get it combined. So the texture of the ricotta is already pretty smooth, so you're not really trying to beat air into it or get it whipped by any means. You're really whisking just long enough to get everything evenly incorporated, so about 30 seconds total. With the toppings all prepared, we can move on to actually making the waffle batter. So at this point, you want to get your waffle iron plugged in and have it start preheating. So I'm combining all of the dry ingredients in a large mixing bowl. We are going to be adding the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, so you want to use a much larger bowl for the dry ingredients than you think you need. So all of these dry ingredients are pretty readily accessible. I did buy the buckwheat flour from my regular grocery service, so I know the Bob's Red Mill brand is available at most grocery stores, so I don't think you should have too much trouble finding it. I am using Dutch processed cocoa here. The recipe did specify to use Dutch process if you have it, so that's what I'm using. So I'm just whisking this to get everything evenly combined. If you have a sifter, you could certainly sift all the ingredients together, but it's really not necessary. All right, so for the wet ingredients, we are using melted coconut oil. The recipe doesn't specify whether to use refined or unrefined, so that's entirely up to you. The refined coconut oil has a higher smoke point and doesn't have as much coconut flavor. So I used unrefined, but that was just my preference. Also, the eggs do need to be at room temperature here, so you want to make sure you pull those out of the refrigerator a little bit in advance to let them just warm up slightly. So just doing a quick whisk to get the sugar incorporated with the eggs, and then once that's looking good, we can go ahead and stream in the buttermilk. If you don't want to use buttermilk because you want to keep this dairy-free, you can use any sort of plant-based milk, so coconut milk, nut milk, etc., and then just add a little bit of white vinegar to that. So even though this recipe is kind of healthy-ish, there are two different kinds of chocolate in here. We had the unsweetened Dutch processed cocoa powder in the dry ingredients, and now I'm chopping up some 60% cocoa chocolate bar to mix throughout the batter. So you want to make sure that this chocolate bar is something that you like the taste of because it will not melt fully, and there will actually be little pockets of it in the finished waffle. So make sure this is something that you like. With the chocolate prepared, we can go ahead and combine the batter now. So I'm pouring wet into dry and just whisking continuously. So you may have noticed in this video, I finally have some nice whisks and this cool stabilizer, so I am whisking effortlessly one-handed. So thank you very much to my siblings for getting me these for my birthday a few weeks ago. I'm really enjoying it so far. So you want to mix the batter until it's homogeneous and there are no clumps remaining, and then you can just add in the chocolate and give it a quick stir to get the chocolate chunks evenly incorporated. So by this point, your waffle maker should be up to temperature. I've got the Smart Waffle Maker from Breville, which has a chocolate waffle setting. If you don't have a chocolate waffle setting, you probably want to be on medium temperature and set the timer for 3 to 4.5 minutes. You're going to just need to keep an eye on it. In terms of amount of batter, my waffle maker specifies a ½ cup of batter per waffle. So just follow the instructions with your waffle maker for how much batter to use so you don't end up with a mess. You'll know when the waffles are done because they're going to look set, and you're going to be able to smell the coconut and the chocolate. So the fragrance on these is very pronounced. Initially, the texture seems soft, but it does firm up as they sit. All right, so the waffles are done. I've got this one all dressed up. So the texture here is pretty firm. It is definitely more tender than a typical waffle, but it does hold its shape a little bit kind of like a cakey kind of texture lifting it out of the pan. I've got that whipped ricotta here, and then my crunchy topping that's cooled, broken up over the top. So it smells great, very coconutty smelling, so I'm excited to try it out. So you can see it looks a little bit fudgy in there. Wow. So it's not overly sweet. It's kind of that nice balance between savory and sweet. So I like that. I'm surprised by the texture. It really reminds me of cake more than a waffle, which is a good thing with chocolate, I think. So this is working well for me. Get a little bite with the ricotta. Got some of the crunchy topping in there too. Yeah, this is really good. Super satisfying, really nice flavor and texture, so I am thrilled with this result. I really hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.